I'm from Kathmandu, Nepal. This is my name is Min Bahadur Shahi. I represent here the Mountain Foundation Nepal. We are working on the mountain issue. I hope all speakers are here, right? Can I see all? So Gita ji, all speakers are here or not? Just I see some few of the speakers.
Yeah, might be they are joining, so we can go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Gita ji. It is my privilege to moderate the session on building resilience of communities from highlands to ocean in the face of climate crisis. I'd like to thank you, organizers, for providing us this platform for the discussion on the issue. We know that the COP26 is going on in Glasgow, UK. The global leaders, civil society activists, private sectors, academia, media professionals around the globe are gathered and are discussing on the climate crisis and potential future intervention on how to tackle this crisis. I hope at the end of this session, we will be able to provide significant suggestions to COP26 as its outcomes for further discussions. The outcomes of the session will be sent to the Blue Zone at COP26 today itself. The session will be significantly contribute among the global leaders to building networking, cooperation and collaboration for sustainable, better planet. This is an hour-long session. We have a prominent, distinguished speakers from different regions who are significantly contributing on the agenda. They have a very, sound knowledge on this, on the climate change, as well as the other, that relevant issue. Let me introduce our today's speakers briefly. Gita Pandey. Pandey is working in Karnali Integrated Rural Development and Research Center, which is one of the largest national NGOs in Nepal as a climate change advocacy manager. Professor Asim Jia. Dr. Jia is currently serving as a professor of public policy and computer science and director of Institute for Environmental Diplomacy and Security at the University of Vermont. Clive Lipchin. Lipchin is serving as a director of Center for Transboundary Water Management at Arava Institute of Environmental Studies in Israel. Maria Del Pia Carneco. I think I currently pronouncing your name, right? So Maria Del Pila Carneco is working as a Dean of the Faculty of Maritime Engineering and Marine Science at the Polytechnic University in Ecuador. Ashutosh Mohanty. Professor Mohanty is currently serving at the Madhyamanchal Professional University and Government Nodal Officer for National Disaster Management and River Basin Hazards Management Program of the Government of India. Zui Win Chin. Zui Win Chin is associated as an inventor and WJ Ecotechnology and chairperson of Association of Sustainable Ecological Engineering Development. So with this few backgrounds, I like, on behalf of organizers, I like to thank you for your valuable time for these sessions. And then, so let me, invite today's speaker for their presentations. First, I'd like to invite Gita Pandey. We all know that we have a very limited time today. So Gita Pandey, she will speak on mountain agenda and the issue and reflect voice of CSO and mountain people who are facing the climate, who are facing the impact of climate change. And she has a good, that very vast knowledge on mountain agenda and issue. Over to you, Pandey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Amin Bahadur Sanji, for your wonderful welcome remarks. Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Good morning and namaste from Glasgow, Scotland. And I'm really delighted to be here among the eminent speakers. As Min Bahadur Sai said, we are already advocating since long for the issues of the mountain agenda and the mountain community since long for the protection and promotion of the rights of the mountain communities. But now it had become the issue of not only the mountain communities. Since few days we are here in Glasgow and the discussions is going on, but it is also the matter of survival of the humanity, not only the mountain communities. So I want to highlight in brief why the mountain matters. As you all know that mountain is home to 15% of the world's population, and it hosts about half of the world's biodiversity. So mountain is the hotspot of the biodiversity of the planet, and it provides fresh water for everyday life to more than half of the humanity. And also mountain is the hub for the agriculture. Regardless of the benefits of the mountain, but mountain are facing the brunt of the climate change and the water crisis and the huge loss due to climate-induced disaster in the recent days we have been hearing in the different news and the global networks. Besides that, mountain and its unique characteristics, the vulnerability and the threats. But the mountain agenda and the issues are not quietly representative in the global negotiations, such as UNFCCC and the climate change negotiation process, for which we are advocating since long. As the mountain people face frequently the political, social, and economic marginalization, and they have lack of access to the basic services as well. So talking about the climate crisis in the mountains, glaciers are melting twice in the rate of the 20,000, we all know that. And the global warming, that is 3 times more in the mountain regions than the global average. And 1/3 of the glaciers will vanish, even if the global warming is limiting up to 1.5 degrees centigrade. And the discussion is going around that if we could limit it up to the 1.5 degrees centigrade or not. But if we limit it to 1.5 as well, then the glaciers will vanish. 1/3 of the Himalayan glaciers will vanish by 2100. So the situation is quite, scary. And we had already known that by the recent IPCC reports. It's the red code for the humanity. Talking about the mountain peoples, they are forced to relocate. We can take the few examples of Nepal as well, from the Chum Valley and the Jomsom. The co-presidents, Mr. Alok Sharma, in his opening remarks at the COP, highlighted that the effects of the mountain communities, quoting the issues of the Jomsom in Nepal, how they are forced to relocate. So it's the agenda we need to discuss here, right in the COP and today as well. And 53% of the mountain people are vulnerable to the food insecurity due to climate change. So climate crisis is hitting hard to the mountain communities. As I quote that, the IPCC report has said that it is a red code for humanity. So even we are talking to limit the temperature at 1.5 degrees centigrade, even if we let me admit, even if we limit the temperature at 1.5 degrees centigrade, and the ice melt will continue for even next 1,000 years if we stop the carbon emission, and the global warming is expected to breach the thresholds of 1.5 degree to the next 20 years globally. And the issues of South Asia, it's more complicated, the extreme precipitation, the unusual floods we are seeing across the South Asia, and the monsoon pattern, the extreme weather events, and the erratic rainfall patterns are damaging the lives and livelihoods of the mountain communities, and the dangerous heat stress across the South Asia, especially in the South Asia. The IPCC report, the ground experience and the experience of the local communities day to day, they are facing such kind of problems in the mountain regions. So talking about the impact in the mountains of Nepal, I had quoted just a few examples, such as Melamchi flood in 2021, the Manang flood. The climate change has increased the loss and damage in Nepal. The 2021 high intensity rainfall is normally in the snowfall region. Occasionally in the Manang and Mustang area, we used to have the snowfall, the high mountain region. But this time we feel the extreme unusual events and the rainfall, like impacting the lives and livelihoods of the mountain people. At the local level, the impacts of the loss and damage, and the unseasonal floods during the end of the October. We just a few weeks before we arrive at the COP, there was a huge loss of the human and economic loss due to the unseasonal floods. So we are bearing the real brunt of the climate change. These are just a few examples I quoted here. And in Nepal, in the Kosi, Gandak, and the Karnali basins, there are many lakes which are at the high risks, and Nepal is in the high risks of the glacial lake outburst flood events. As I talked before, the climate change had impacted the whole mountain and the whole mountain economy cycle, as the livelihood of the mountain communities is based on the livestock and the agriculture. But due to the climate change, the degradation of the pasture land, it's been quite difficult for the sustaining the livelihood as well. And the tourism is one of the major economy of the country, and the mountains are suffering. Not only the mountains, the mountain people and the mountain livelihoods are suffering. So what we are discussing today here. And annually, we had a loss of 1.5 to 2% of the GDP due to extreme loss and damage events annually. And it had been predicted that the 13% of the GDP will be lost by the 2100. And as I discussed previously, the food insecurity, it is the major problem due to the production losses and due to the impact of the climate change at the ground level. So talking about the impacts of climate change that we all are aware, it's not the issue of the mountain. So we are talking about, connecting the upstream and the downstream linkages, not only the upstream and downstream linkages within the country, but from the highland to the oceans. My fellow speakers will shed light on this after the session. And talking about the downstream impacts, we have glacial lake floods and more frequent floods, as I already mentioned, the issues of loss and damage, and not only the frequent floods, but we are facing the erratic droughts as well in the long run, with the glacier-less mountains and the waterless river that we are facing here in the region where we are currently working in Nepal, the mountain region of Nepal. And not only the lives and livelihoods, it had been impacted by the climate change, but the migration and the forced displacement, one of the issues that I mentioned regarding the Jomsom and the Mustang Valley of Nepal. Like the similar cases, my fellow speakers will speak how it had affected in the entire HPS River and the other river basins as well. It has exacerbated the poverty and injustice, and it has also, the tradition and the customary rights are being lost. So on behalf of CSOs, as we are working closely with the mountain communities, with the women, with the vulnerable people, with the children, since long we are working and we are advocating for their rights, not only for their rights, for their survival, as I mentioned. So just before this COP26 events, our organization, that means the CSOs working in Nepal, together with the government of Nepal and ICMOD as a knowledge partner who is working in the mountain issues, not only in Nepal, but in the entire HTS region. We had jointly organized a symposium, and through that symposium, we had a rigorous type of the discussions, and we urged all the parties to address the issues of the climate change, especially on the food security, which has directly impacted the lives of the women, poor, and the marginalized group, and to execute the climate resilient policies, ensuring financing and the implementation mechanism with the assured voice of the mountain people, leaving no one behind, the target of SDGs, as we used to talk more about these days. And next one, we had highlighted that we urge not only the government of Nepal, but to the all parties to agree on making loss and damage a permanent agenda item of UNFCCC. And Nepal government strongly link and advocate the issues based on the recent extreme events on Nepal's high mountains and seek the dedicated finance for loss and damage. And equally, we demand the need for the collaboration of the highland and the lowland countries in the international climate change discourse. Okay, I'm coming to the end. And we also urge for the United Member States to separate establish UN mechanism to deal with the mountain crisis. So we urge the government of Nepal to lead the issues, raise the agenda of the mountain countries during the COP26, not only at the COP26, but at the other international forums as well. So I'm coming to the end. For the collaborative partnership and cooperations, as I already mentioned, to strengthen it, and also to, dedicated some resources for research, monitoring to identify the knowledge gap and the capacity building of the communities. So based on that discussions, we had, prepared a declaration and we handed over to the government of Nepal before the COP. So I just want to share a few highlights what our head of the state, Prime Minister Sherbhadra Deva, delivered on his remarks during the COP at the World Leaders Summit. Basically, he urged the leaders to recognize the specific vulnerability of the high mountains and accord high priority of the mountain agenda in the climate negotiations. And also he called upon the parties to agree on making loss and damage a standalone agenda for negotiations and the support frameworks for financing, and also to raise the awareness of the climate crisis in the Himalayas. The government will and keeping the global temperature below 1.5 is vital for the mountain people. It's an issue of the survival. These are the few quotes I took from the PM speech just few days before here at the COP. So thank you everyone. So all the questions and queries are welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gita, for your wonderful presentations. You had mentioned some, that glimpses of mountain communities or mountain people, how they are facing the climate crisis. Once again, thank you very much. Of course, that I would appreciate if each and every, that our speakers limit on time, because we have some floor discussion and everything. Once again, thank you very much, Gita, for your wonderful presentation. Then I would like to invite Dr. Jia, Dr. Asim Jia, for your presentation. Asim Jia will present on the issue of basically on transboundary water in transboundary on highlands, on ocean, anticipatory governments of hydrometric regime shift in the transboundary river basins. Over to you, Dr. Jia.
Thank you very much, Minshahi and Gita. Thank you very much for setting us up this for this meeting, and a very interesting side event. I wanted to talk about Highlands to Oceans, and as Gita talked about the impacts of climate change in mountain communities and what they say, like typically what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, but in this case, what happens in mountains doesn't stay in the mountains. It basically goes from the mountains to the oceans, and along with it takes whatever happens in the mountain downstream and has downstream effects. So this project that we've been working on, Highlands to Ocean, Anticipatory Governance of Hydroclimatic Regime Shifts in the Transboundary River Basins, is kind of like a very international global cooperation that spans currently 4 river basins, and other river basins are being expanded. So in the next slide, I'm showing you transboundary Indus and Mekong River Basin boundaries that span highlands of Tibetan Plateau across 9 riparian countries, lowlands and oceans. So for example, in the left-hand side, you see in the Indus Basin starts in the Tibetan Plateau in China and going through India and Afghanistan, and then goes into the lowlands of Pakistan and enters the Indian Ocean. And you see when the dams are being built as a way to adapt to climate change or manage floods. They also have downstream impacts. In the Indus Basin, there are some big dams that are being constructed, but if you look on the right-hand side in the Mekong Basin, the number and amount of dams is enormous. You see all those black triangle dots here. So dams is one thing, but then also there is deforestation happening. There are communities that are being affected, as Gita pointed out, not only in the mountains, but also downstream because of the poor water quality. Also challenges with the sedimentation in the water, access to water for growing food. And so it's not just about hydropower, it's like many other impacts in terms of drinking water supply, minimal environmental flows. So all of those matters need to be taken and looked at it from integrated perspective. Similarly, in the Amazon system, we see a lot of the dams here near the highlands, which then have impacts in the downstreams in the Amazon basin. On the right-hand side, we were showing the Jordan River map where in the highlands, again, we see the dams in Syria and Lebanon, upper parts of Israel, and then it goes through in the downstream. So I think the point that I wanted to make was that what happens in the mountains does not stay in the mountains. So this is like a very high level perspective here that our research projects is looking at, like how do shifts in global climate change and ENSO regimes like El Nino, La Nina patterns affect the dynamics of regime shift in highlands. So for example, whether glaciers are melting or not at the basin scale, how is climate changing? How does that affect whether we're going to have droughts or floods? How do they affect the provision of ecosystem services to irrigation, fishing, drinking, recreation, cultural ecosystem services, whether those demands are met or not met, whether we are seeing mass migrations of stability, what the governments within the countries can do in terms of anticipatory action, like perceived action and do the action now, or what can be done in terms of cooperation across these different countries, whether there's going to be conflict or not. So that's like the overarching concept that we're working on. And I have my collaborators from Jordan, Dr. Clive who's going to come in next, and Dr. Pilar Cornego, who's going to come about Amazon system. So they'll be expanding on some of these issues that we're working on. In the interest of time, I'm just going to say that we are also like building very like high resolution, rigorous computer simulation models that integrate the glacial melt models, climate models with water budget models, hydrological models, and then link them with the societal approaches at the basin scale to develop some of these larger kind of like address issues that Gita brought up, and you'll hear more from the other speakers. So our major initiative is securing clean water in transboundary river basins through science and environmental diplomacy. We have set up a network of networks called Transboundary Water and Cooperation Network. You can see more information on this in www.transboundarywater.org. And through this process, we are trying to identify the gaps in transboundary watershed monitoring, water security, early warning system, early action systems. So for example, when are floods coming, droughts, famine, water quality, early warning systems. So we're working on these issues, both within some basins, but across the basins, identifying the gaps and trying to understand like how we can build the institutional and adaptive capacity and have that information communicated to the vulnerable people, but also mainstream that in our planning and development processes. We're trying to support scientist to scientist and community to community, like track 2 and track 3 cooperation within and across river basins. And we are also working on integrating indigenous knowledge and wisdom and scientific knowledge, which is really a mountainous challenge, but we feel that participation and inclusion of indigenous people is critical in these river basins because they have managed these issues for a long time. So with that, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm going to have, in the interest of time, move it to Dr. Clive and Dr. Pilar to expand on this. Thank you. So Min, you can introduce.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Jia, for your wonderful presentation. And scientifically, you have, presented your presentation. And then I hope that your presentation and all your, that this session will help us to how we can collaborate our relation, that how we can make strong, the relations upstream and downstream. That session also will help us to build the, that networking across the globe. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Jia, for your presentation. Now I'd like to invite Clive Lipton for your presentation, and she's going to present on climate and water security issues in transboundary river basins. Clive, sorry, Clive, your
It's okay. Hi.
His presentation.
Good morning, everybody. I need to be able
Over to
to
you.
share. I need to be able to share my screen. Let me just. Okay, I have it. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to participate in this side event at COP26. So as Asim mentioned, I'm part of the network that Asim is putting together on looking at these various river basins around the world that bring together aspects of transboundary management and the climate crisis. I work specifically in the Middle East region, and I'll just present some of the issues that we're facing with respect to water and the climate crisis in the Jordan River Basin. Firstly, I think that irrespective of which river basin we're dealing with around the world, I would suggest there are two basic fundamentals we all need to keep in mind. One is that all water resources are transboundary, from the most local to the most international. In other words, water resources management and diplomacy and politics are inextricably linked one with the other. And the second, which is very much an issue related to the climate crisis, is water supply and demand deficits are growing around the world. And this is certainly very much an issue in the Middle East region where I work. This is a quote sort of putting this into context. The Middle East will be uninhabitable by the end of the century if we don't cut CO2 emissions, so say a growing number of climate change scientists. This summer's extreme heat will become the norm, with temperatures of 60 degrees Celsius commonplace. Sound implausible? Recall the 4-day health holiday imposed in Iraq during the July 2015 heat wave. So all the climate models are very clear that in the Middle East, the Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, major areas of the Mediterranean are all going to be at the forefront of climate change. And these are the areas with some of the most water-stressed regions, including that pretty much nearly all of the water is transboundary. A major driver for water, of course, is population growth. And our region is also one of the areas with some of the fastest growing populations in the world. And here you can see the growth of the Middle East, Africa populations in comparison to Europe. So by the year 2050, we are going to have not just less water and more extreme climates, but we're going to have more people, and those people are going to need water resources. Specifically where I work, which is Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, you can see here some of the numbers that show in all of these regions. There is a growing deficit in terms of water supply and demand. In Israel, we are currently have available about 1,800 million cubic meters of water per year, but the demand is greater than 2 billion. In Palestine, the demand is double that of the water supply, and Jordan is running a deficit of about 500 million cubic meters of water every year. The sources of water in our region, Israel, Jordan, Palestine, are very, very small. We basically are dependent on one freshwater resource, which is the Jordan River system, which Asim briefly introduced in his talk. And in addition, we have groundwater resources as well. All of these resources are transboundary in nature. The Jordan River system, as you see here on the diagram on the right of the slide, includes the upstream countries of Syria and Lebanon in the north, Israel, Jordan, and Palestine as downstream countries. I just want to walk you through some of the issues that we're facing with respect to the Jordan River system, which is a system that has great significance around the world, not because it's a large system, but because of its connection to the monotheistic religions of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, specifically the areas of the Sea of Galilee in the north, the Jordan River system, and the Dead Sea as well. Over time, as the populations are growing and the climate is becoming more extreme in our region, we're seeing here a growing trend of water insecurity, where water and supply and demand gaps are growing. So the greatest challenge that we face in our region is how to close these gaps. Even though Israel has taken a huge technological step forward in increasing exponentially the amount of desalinated water to improve water supply, desalination and also wastewater treatment and reuse, two technological advances for non-conventional water supply, are still not going to be enough to close the gap because, again, the populations are growing and the gap is growing. In other words, technology will only get us so far. I just want to walk you through some schematics to show you the impact on water resources due to the increasing exponential demand for water supply, specifically the importance of water for agriculture in arid regions. So this is the Jordan River system in its natural state, where water was flowing unimpeded from the upper reaches of the Jordan system via the Sea of Galilee all the way down to the Dead Sea. And the annual flow of water was 1.3 billion cubic meters of water per year. But as populations grew and the demand for food grew, water diversions began to be pulled out of the system. By the 1970s, the system was completely altered from an ecological system to an engineering system. Israel was extracting out of the upper basin about 400 million cubic meters of water per year, and Jordan was extracting about 300 million cubic meters of water per year through very large and complex engineering water diversion projects. The ecological impact of these systems as they increased in size to meet growing demand was a very, very diminished Jordan River system, decreases in water quality due to mostly agricultural runoff, such impacting the quality because of increased nitrates and phosphates entering the water. The bottom line is that the Jordan River system today no longer functions as a natural river. The annual inflow now into the Dead Sea is less than, is about 10% of its pre-1960 flow. What does this mean? It means that the Dead Sea Basin is rapidly diminishing. Here you can see more or less what is happening. The middle slide is more or less what is left of the Dead Sea today because of all of those upstream diversions from the Israeli-Jordanian sides, and also some diversions also by Syria. And this is what the Dead Sea will look like by the year 2050. In other words, one of our challenges in a transboundary and climate crisis setting is how to sort of meet the economic demands of water on the one hand for human needs and the ecological impacts that this is creating on the other side. So all around the world, there are examples of river systems that are hugely impacted to large-scale human diversions, and the Dead Sea Basin is one of them.
Yeah.
And these, I'm finishing my presentation.
Sorry.
The solution that is being proposed to try to rehabilitate the Dead Sea is a very ambitious economic infrastructure project called the Dead Sea Red Sea project, which is to pump water from the Red Sea all along the desert regions of Israel and Jordan and discharge the brine of that water into the Dead Sea, and to use the altitude difference from 0 meters at the Red Sea to more than 400 meters below sea levels at the Dead Sea for large-scale desalination. You can see here that the project is costing, has been costed at around $10 billion. This is according to World Bank figures. The goal of the project is to stabilize the sea levels of the Dead Sea, but also to supply electricity and water to the countries of the region. And this is where there is an interesting intersect here on the transboundary dynamics, because this project can only move forward if there is regional cooperation in an area that I'm sure most of you are aware is an area that has some really complex political challenges. The problems or the concerns with this project are, as is written here, the dangers, changing the sea level of the Dead Sea, the development of calcium sulfates and algae, and increasing the salinity of water aquifers in the Arava region, which is this region over here. But that being said, this is a project of great controversy. There is a huge ongoing debate on the advantages and disadvantages of such a project. But I'll leave you with the final slide, which is the opportunities of addressing water scarcity in our region and bringing peoples of the region together. So this is a photograph that was taken a few years ago at the headquarters of the World Bank in Washington, where we had the energy ministers of Israel, Jordan, and Palestine meeting together to sign a memorandum of agreement to study the impacts of a Red Sea, Dead Sea project. So I want to leave my presentation on an optimistic note, even in an area of huge scarcity, growing demand, and one of the most significant climate crisis hotspots, the Middle East. People are able to see beyond those issues and see the opportunities of coming together to solve some of these problems. So on that note, I want to thank you all for your attention and wish everybody a very successful session and continued interesting times at COP26. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Clive Lipton, for your presentation. Water is extremely vital resources for survival of the planet. So it is, water resources is also the political agenda for us, you know, that in global, regional, and national level. Many, you know, that part of the world, people are facing the, you know, that water scarcity. So this is the, you know, transboundary and the cooperation between the upstream and downstream is quite important for the future generation as well. So for your kind information, we are going to organize a Mountain Advocacy Summit 2021, Unlocking Mountain Potentials, Connecting the Dots for the Sustainable Planet, on the occasion of, you know, that International Mountain Day on 11th of December. We are planning to organize this, you know, that Mountain Advocacy Summit in Mustang district, you know, that which is the Vermont district, during the COP26 in Glasgow. So thank you very much for your, once again, for your this wonderful presentation. Then I would like to invite Maria Del Pia Corneco for your presentation. She will present on climate and integrated water management issues in Amazon basin. Over to you, Corneco.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Today I switch a little bit and I'm going from building resilience of communities. In our case, we have seen the mountains, we have seen the transboundary basins, and now we're looking to a place that is called to the ocean. Next Wednesday, I hope everybody goes to the session, and then we will present with my colleague Sandra from Ecuador, the Amazonian basin status. So we have to remember that today 53% of the population of the world live in urban areas, but also that there is an agreement through the new urban agenda that we have to establish and work out this link between urban and rural areas. And one of the most important things that we have seen during the pandemic last year and this year is that food security has been a key point, especially coming from the rural areas. So the working model we have is one that has been set up to build up resilience in urban communities, but without forgetting the linkage to the rural ones. So what we do is we work with the quadruple helix model for academia, which I belong to, government, which might be the national level or the local level, industry, and society. And under the umbrella of these 4 UN agreements, in the framework of disaster reduction, Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the new urban agenda. And what is important is that we have to remember that we cannot work alone, that we have to work with the community. And in a sense, as the academia, we have a responsibility also because we train the policymakers. In terms of water, what we expect in the whole Ecuador is in general an increase in precipitation. Downscaling the different scenarios, we have found out that this increase might not be, as we would like it distributed along the year, but it will be concentrated in few days. So we will have more flooding, the opposite of what we have seen with the previous presenters, than in the past. And in this co-production model, we have to work on capacity development for the communities, for the policymakers. If we don't do that, we're not going to be successful. In this capacity building, in a co-production model, we work with the university funding for our time for research, but also the local government puts fresh money to work out these problems, to see how resilience can be built up in looking at a multi-hazard environment where we have floods, landslides, and heat wave. Are these extreme climate events or chronic events? So we are facing increasing precipitations. Sometimes they are related to El Niño Southern Oscillation event that most of you may know. We also have problems with urban hydrology and institutional and social constraints. Because of these climate events, we have internal migration from rural areas to the urban ones. And people go and live in these irregular settlements where we don't have the basic service like water and sanitation, and that are prone to floods. These chronic disturbances derive also from underestimate the infrastructure and social processes of these irregular settlements. So what we do with all this research, I mean, we build up the vulnerability maps to floods, to heat wave, to landslides. We design a different nature-based solution projects to reduce the flooding impact. We work on early warning systems so people is ready for any extreme event. But if we don't translate this into strategies that can be applied by the local governments, it might rest up in journal publications. So in the case that we work with this medium-sized city, which is 300,000 inhabitants, we have set out, for example, for a strategic objective, which means that the city council approved new laws for adapting and adopting disaster risk reduction principles and climate change adaptation into their land use resilience planning. We also work on strengthening institutional governance, adopting new knowledge, and also adding the urban landscape for ecosystem planning. With the early warning systems, in our case, this is a small city, we have in red the flooding areas. We work on this is my alarm, so I have to finish. We work on an early warning system for flooding, work out with the communities. But at the end, what do we want? We want to build up resilience in these communities. And what happened in the Highlands really affects what's happening at the end of the river basins, which are the estuaries. And one of our common problems is that how we put such amount of information into the policymakers for effectively build up resilience in these communities. And I believe we have a huge task. And my message is that we are not alone. We can see here in this meeting, and the climate change impacts will demand very creative and innovative ways of coping with a shortage or excess of water in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for your wonderful presentation. And we hope that we all are together for policy advocacy, and we hope that we can influence our policymakers together, that building the partnership with the civil society, media, including the private sector as well. If we are talking about the other some issues that we better to not forget the private sector as well. So we can build the, that effective collaboration and cooperation for the future generation, and we would need to make our advocacy process more strong and strong. So once again, thank you for your presentation. Then I'd like to invite Ashutosh Mohanty for your presentation, and Professor Ashutosh will present on climate adaptation through community scale intervention in Hindu Kush Himalayas. Hindu Kush Himalaya itself, culturally and politically, very, very important, that part of this region. Over to you, Ashutosh, please.
Minchai, I don't see him here in the list of participants. Maybe, is he there? I don't see him. So probably we can move to Jinwai, our
Okay. We can move another one. So we hope that Ashutosh will join shortly.
Yeah.
So I'm going to invite another speaker, Jui Win Chen, and I'm sorry, she he will present on the using JW eco technology for building carbon capturing, carbon negative community resilience infrastructure to reverse climate crisis and create carbon economy. Over to you, Chen.
Hey, thank you, Minshahi. Thank you as well, Gita and Asim, and also the Hub for putting up this wonderful event. Good day, everyone. We are ASEED, and it's a great pleasure meeting you at this event during the COP26. Our speaker today is the inventor of the JW Eco Technology, Mr. Riwen Chen.
大家好，我是 JW 生态工法发明人陈瑞文，非常荣幸有此机会在 COP26 与大家在一起，针对目前的气候变迁问题共同提出解方。
Greetings, my name is Riwen Chen. I am the inventor of JW Eco Technology, and I'm from Taiwan. It is a great honor to be with you today at this COP26 event and together provide a solution for the problems of climate change.
长期以来，我们持续地在地球种下负面的循环因子，造成大自然中风、水、火、土的四大不协调。因此，我们看到越来越多的自然灾害发生。
For a long time, we've been planting seeds of negativity into our planet, disrupting the course of nature's four elements: wind, water, fire, and earth. Hence, more and more natural disasters are happening. Environmental issues today are no longer individual cases.
环境的问题已不再是单一地点的新闻，而是广大、同时在全球发生的现象，并且已来到了你我的家门口。 我们不能再置身事外，让我们开始行动吧。
Disasters are now experienced everywhere and have arrived at our doorsteps. We cannot turn ourselves away anymore. Let us act now. Okay, we will have a presentation and a short video for today. That was a guest speech from Mr. Riwen Chen. So without further ado, this is our presentation. Okay, so the topic for today is building carbon capturing, carbon negative, resilient community infrastructures with JW Eco Technology in order to reverse the climate crisis and create carbon economy. This is a brief introduction of our association and our vision, and also our mission. So since the 2015 COP21, we made promises to improve climate change. However, researchers show that the 2015 to 2019 period was the warmest 5-year period recorded. With disasters becoming more frequent, more deadly, how many 5 years do we have? We should act with effective solutions that won't cause any side effects for our future generations, and we should do it now. But the solutions that we currently use not only doesn't effectively solve these problems, it creates more, forming a negative cycle. But we found a solution to this. So during 2018, August 23, 600 millimeters of rain poured down in the city of Tainan within 24 hours, causing severe flooding and also heavy loss. Analysis of this disaster showed that the main causes behind this were inadequate development and management of constructions. However, one school called the Lehming High School managed to avoid this disaster, being located in the epicenter of this serious flooding. So how did this school, being 70 centimeters lower than surrounding grounds and also full of sewage gutters, avoid being flooded? And also managed to capture 22,000 tons of water for recycling usage. It is by applying JW Eco technology and opening up its enclosed surfaces. This revolutionizes traditional construction concepts and creates a positive cycle within the environment and also the economy. To be precise, JW Eco technology activates the circulation of nature's 4 elements, achieving self-restoration of the environment. It allows an on-site infiltration of rainwater, which can then be stored underground in JW Eco water banks, solving 2 problems at once, drought and flood. And also providing water for arid areas, which is purified within the JW Eco technology system, achieving a first-grade water quality. So here you can see the before and after of the water. Air is also able to circulate between the atmosphere and soil, with pollutants and carbon being captured during this process, which also activates the regulation of temperature, solving heat island effects. During summertime, roads using JW Eco technology are 21 degrees cooler than traditional asphalt roads. In wintertime, pavements using JW Eco technology can help melt snow. So with an opened up surface, JW Eco technology can revive the soil, forming JW Eco pavement wetland ecosystem, providing food in urban areas, and also creating oases in deserts, helping solve desertification problems. When using JW Eco technology in roads, it is the only permeable pavement able to bear heavy loading and also traffics, making it suitable for roads located in seaports and also airports, solving traditional permeable pavement problems. It is also the only permeable pavement able to maintain high infiltration rate after 10 years. So we've got a comparison table here on the benefits and cost between JW Eco technology roads and traditional permeable pavements. This is the case in Taiwan, so it might vary a bit according to where you are and also the design. But in general, JW Eco technology can be used throughout different scales and for different purposes. From environment planning in school campuses, infrastructure developments in communities and residential areas, corporate collaboration, helping them achieve social responsibility and contributions, to reversing harsh environments into study sites of different domains, for example, resilience, sustainability, carbon capturing, and also carbon negativity. So JW Eco technology has been recognized by a variety of sectors, including the construction, energy, sustainability, and also climate change and low carbon. It has also been appointed by different public and private sectors throughout international events, especially the COP events. When we face a global climate crisis, we should act in a holistic yet localized way for a change to be possible from highland to ocean, from urban to rural. By creating JW EcoSmart Sponge Cities, we will be able to reserve a safe and pure land for our future generations and reversing the climate crisis. This will require a lot of bravery and dedication. So we have prepared a short video documenting how these brave people view the JW Eco technology. So can you see the image of the video?
Yes, please, yes.
Okay.
How long, that this video?
7 minutes.
Oh my God, we don't have, that we have left only 5 minutes time. So please go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
This situation has gone to the extent that the Tier 1 population have no choice than to seek refuge anymore by engaging themselves in prayers.
Les femmes continuent à supporter la plus grande partie de la charge des activités climatiques.
We are targeting innovation that helps solve problems that we're all facing together today around the world.
我是街道生态工法的发明人陈瑞文，来自台湾，不论你来自哪里，今天我们集体在COP22，为的就是要如何拯救我们共同的地球。
I met Dr. Chang 5 years ago in Paris during the climate change Paris Agreement that was held at the United Nations Conference of Parties 21 in La Haute, Paris. The strategic partnership that our NGO African Climate Change Research Center is establishing JW Eco Technology is very important and timely in segregating the climate change negative impacts, not only in Nigeria and Taiwan, but also across the globe.
好，今天就这样子启动，叫我们自然生态工法来修复地球。
剩下1分钟吧。这结束。现在还有几个点唱。
This research site is the first and only location in the United States where GWC technology is
So
currently
video is not clear. So what to do?
GWC technology demonstrated permeability that is greater than 10,000 millimeters per hour. We hypothesize the construction of drainages around the things may not be necessary.
在市政府的强力领导下和基达布生态工法发明的我们团队的全力帮助思想，实施了一个帮助
这是主席的点吗？这不是我们主席点吗？
实际上，这个是在工法，就是
主席是主持人还是我？
他想要，他我们这边评价，
请我们这边评价。
我现在做这个工法，它是成功的。
我纯粹要这个点，接着说这个定调。
And I want to hand over the certificate and the award. It's companies that use technology for the
都没结束了，不是啊，那结束就结束了，我们也结束了。
他要做结尾。
对，哦，
他说请我们等一下，
这个人家
我们是有让我们一起为自己的社区、城市、国家的未来建设和连碳排的这道
主办单位在叫他，
来修复地球，改善
主办单位在叫他，
为地球带来进步加。
关掉。
Okay, since I think we are out of time, thank you everyone.
Okay.
Back to you, Min Shahi.
Okay, thank you for your this wonderful presentation, and this will be that benefit for us. And I like your this vision statement: embrace earth, benefit for humanity. I like this, that your vision statement. Thank you very much for your statement presentation. So we don't have time for the floor discussion. We have still 26 more participants here in our Zoom platform. So I think you all are allow me to close the session now. So we all are in the in the hurry because we need to attend another program as well, who are in the Glasgow, UK. So once again, I'd like to thank you very much for all the speakers for your powerful presentation on climate crisis and the other, that some introducing new technology and other things. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of organizers. And also I'd like to thank you, South Asian Resilience Hub COP26, to providing this space to organize this side event as well. Thank you once again, to South Asian Resilience Hub COP26. And you will, I'm sure that the organizers will produce one brief note on this session, and you will circulate the that concern platform for further information. Transboundary issue is not only for the of the civil society organization, media, other things. Transboundary issue is also a political agenda of that. So we need to focus our advocacy in political level as well, not in the that I'm not saying any that political ideological things or other matters, but transboundary issue is also the political agenda. So we need to that advocate with the and build the partnership with the, that political leaders, global political leaders as well, so that our policy advocacy may be, that can influence in the political or policy level. So mountain is also the, that the resources, water for the water is tower for the water resources, and other the biodiversity and the biological, that biodiversity, rich in the biodiversity also. So these sessions, that I understood from here, that how we can build the, that strong collaboration and cooperation among the, not only the, that with the some, that civil society organization and political or bureaucrats, but how we can build the relation between the upstream and downstream communities, people, so that, that we can understand the situation of the islands as well as the, that downstream also. So these are the some, that points I'd like to mention here. So once again, thank you very much for all of you for your, that meaningful participation in this event. So once again, thank you very much, organizers, for providing me this opportunity as a